Presentation Plus is available exclusively with the new 4th edition of Interchange, the most widely used and the most successful English course in the world, incorporating video, audio, and even online resources, all with the click of a mouse. With Presentation Plus, your students will be laser-focused on the task at hand as you use the built-in presentation tools to highlight key concepts, reveal answers to exercises, annotate passages, play class audio passages and video segments, and even embed web links right into your lessons. Let us show you how Presentation Plus can help you deliver more engaging and effective lessons. Visit the link below or contact your Cambridge University Press representative for a demonstration today.
Hello and welcome to English for Arabs channel. English for Arabs is English for all. Interchange 3, Unit 15, Part 1, 4th edition. Unit 15. There should be a law. Page 100. 1. The word of exercise number 1. Cactus. Cactus, a prickly plant that grows in the desert. Pretend. Act as if something is true when it's false. Seeing eye dog, a dog that's trained to guide blind people. Some words here are extra, like this word, from Interchange 3rd edition. Flush. Pull a lever or cord to make water go through a toilet. Legal. Illegal. Illegal. Not legal. Against the law. Offense, a crime. Royalties, royalties, money that's paid to a musician. The meaning of this word, payment. 2. Word of exercise number 2. Helmet, a hard protective hat. Leash, a chain or leather strap to lead a dog. Letter, to spread across an area or place it untidily. Honk, make noise with a horn. 3. Periodic, from time to time. High-rise, tall building. Ban, prohibit, forbid. Fur, animal skins. Strict, very strong. Dress codes, rules about appropriate clothing. Offensive, disrespectful. Bullying, intentionally frightening someone who's smaller or weaker. Intentionally frightening someone who's smaller or weaker. Often a problem in schools. Outsourcing, hiring people outside the company to perform certain jobs. Downsizing, a reduction in the number of employees, working for a company. Ethnic conflict, problems between people of different races, nations, tribes, or cultural background. Graffiti, also can make the T soft T. Graffiti, words or pictures written or drawn illegally on walls of buildings and public property. Illiteracy, being unable to read or write. Stray animals, dogs and cats that don't belong to anyone. Unit 15. There should be a law. Exercise 1, snapshot. It's against the law. In the United States and Canada. In Arizona, You may go to prison for 25 years if you cut down a cactus. This is a cactus. It's a plant which grows in desert. In New Britain, contact. Fire trucks must travel at 25 miles per hour even when going to a fire. So if the fire truck travels more than 25 miles per hour, it's a problem. In the state of Washington, it's illegal to pretend your parents are rich. It's illegal, not legal, against the law. It's against the law to pretend, to say something which is not true, to show something which is not true, that your mom and dad are very rich people. In Canada, 35% of radio broadcasting time must have Canadian content, British content. What about other countries? In other countries, in Switzerland, it's an offense, it's a crime. It's an offense to hang clothes out to dry on a Sunday. So this happens in different countries. People hang their clothes out, to dry them in the sun. This is against the law. In Switzerland, in Australia, it's illegal to walk on the right side of footpath. It's against the law not to flush a public toilet. It's against the law not to flush a public toilet in Singapore. In Finland, taxi drivers must pay royalties if they play music for customers. So in Finland, taxi drivers must pay royalties, payment, money, if they play music for customers. Which of these laws would you like to have in your country and why? Can you think of reasons for these laws? Why do they make all of these laws? Do you know of any other unusual laws? Do you know any other unusual laws which are not usual?
Unit 15. There should be a law. Page 100, Exercise 2, Perspectives. Part A. Listen to people make recommendations at a community meeting. Would you agree with these proposals if they were made in your community? Check your opinion. Community meeting notes. 1.
Cyclists should be required to wear helmets.
2.
Pet owners shouldn't be allowed to walk dogs without a leash.
3.
People ought to be required to end parties at midnight.
4.
Something has got to be done to stop littering.
5.
People mustn't be permitted to park motorcycles on the sidewalks.
6.
Laws must be passed to control the noise from car alarms.
7.
Drivers should only be permitted to honk their horns in case of an emergency.
Exercise number 2, Perspectives. Here, we'll listen to people make recommendations to give advice at a community meeting. This is meeting related to the society. Would you agree with these proposals if they were made in your community, if they were made in your society? Check through your opinion. You choose here about these recommendations. Strongly agree, somewhat agree, or disagree. I don't agree. 1. Cyclists should be required to wear helmets. Cyclists, bicycles riders should be required to wear helmets. What's a helmet? A helmet, a protective hat. Pet owners shouldn't be allowed to walk dogs without a leash. So the owners of animals, they shouldn't be allowed to walk dogs without a leash. What's a leash? A chain or strap to lead a dog. A chain or leather strap to lead a dog. People ought to be required to end parties at midnight, to finish the party at 12 o'clock at night. Something has got to be done to stop littering. What's littering? To stop littering. Littering? To spread across an area untidily. To spread across an area or place untidily. 5. People mustn't be permitted to park motorcycles on the sidewalks. Sidewalks, the pavement. People shouldn't park their motorcycles on the pavements. 6. Laws must be passed to control the noise from car alarms. 7. Drivers should only be permitted to honk their horns, to make noise with a horn in case of an emergency. So drivers should only use their horns in case of any emergency, of something emergent, something urgent. If there is an urgent thing, an urgent issue. So if you agree with any of these recommendations, you should choose strongly agree or somewhat agree, rather agree or disagree. I don't agree. B. Group work. Compare your opinions if you have different opinions. Give reasons for your opinions to try to get your classmates to agree with you. Exercise number 3. Grammar focus.
Page 101, Exercise 3, Grammar Focus. Giving recommendations and opinions. When you think something is a good idea.
Cyclists should be required to wear a helmet. Pet owners shouldn't be allowed to walk dogs without a leash. People ought to be required to end parties at midnight. People ought not to be required to end parties at midnight.
When you think something is absolutely necessary.
Laws must be passed to control the noise from car alarms. People mustn't be permitted to park motorcycles on the sidewalks. A rule has to be made to require cycling lanes on city streets. Something has got to be done to stop littering.
You give recommendations, you give advice and opinions. When you think something is a good idea, like this one, cyclists should be required to wear a helmet. So, cyclists should be required to wear helmets by a policeman. Pet owners shouldn't be allowed to walk dogs without a leash. People ought not to be required to end parties at midnight. This is of course by the law. So here, to give recommendations and advice. If something is a good idea, like here, and you would like to give advice, we're gonna use the object like cyclists, pet owners, people, should or shouldn't, or ought. Ought means should. The negative ought not. Plus ought not to or ought to. Plus be plus past participle. PP. Required, allowed, required. So we're gonna have object, should, shouldn't, be, ought or ought not to be, plus past participle. When you think something is absolutely necessary, so this is necessary, this is very important, this is essential, and it means here, if it's necessary, important, essential, it means you must do it. Laws must be passed to control the noise from car alarms. People mustn't be permitted to park motorcycles on the sidewalks. A rule has to be made to require cycling lanes on city streets. Something has got to be done to stop littering. So here, you're gonna put the object, because this is passive, laws, people, a rule, something, must, mustn't, has to, has got to, have got to, be, plus past participle.
The passive voice with modals. So, our grammar today is the passive voice with modals. Now, we have seen the passive voice with modals previously to talk about how to do something, to describe a process. But today we're using it to provide opinions or suggestions. So let's remember what the passive voice is. Well, it's very important in the passive voice to start with the receiver. The receiver of the action is the subject of our sentence. So in this case, it's new highways. Then we're using a modal. So I'm using need to for my modal. Okay. Then I use the verb to be, which is always used in the passive voice. And then I use my past participle, which here I'm using built. So I'm saying new highways need to be built. And that's a suggestion, that's my opinion for how to reduce traffic in San Jose. Now, if I want to describe why do new highways need to be built, I can use an infinitive phrase to describe why. So new highways need to be built. Why? To accommodate cars. Okay? Now, let's remember something. Now, when I use a modal verb, right, I need to remember that modal verbs are special because the verb after is always in a base form. So I need to remember that when I use my modal, for example, highways, new highways, need to is my modal verb. So therefore, I'm using be in the base form verb. Okay? I'm not changing that verb to be. I'm only using the base form verb, not conjugating. Okay. Okay, so let's take a look at the different modals that I can use to express my opinion and my suggestion. Now, if my suggestion or my opinion I think is just a good idea, I'm going to use these modals here. So I can say should, if I want to be negative, I say shouldn't, and I can use ought to express a good idea, like a suggestion. Now, if you don't know what ought to is, it's exactly the same as should. It's a different way of saying should. So you can use those interchangeably. Again, say it with me. Ought to. Or oughta. Some people say oughta. Okay. Now, if I think that my opinion or my suggestion is a little bit more necessary, I can use these modals here. I can use have got to, has got to, have to, or has to. Or if I think it's necessary, I can say need to or needs to, right? If I think it's not necessary, I might say mustn't, or something that's really important not to do, mustn't. Or if I think something is really, really important, I can say must, almost absolutely necessary with must, okay? Notice my only modals using to are with need to, has to, have to, has got to, have got to, and down here with ought to. My other modals, for example, must and mustn't, or should and shouldn't, those don't use to. So do not use to with those modals. Okay. So I want to talk about something very important with a couple of these modals, okay? The modals that are very important to think about with our conjugation are these ones. Needs to or need to, has to, have to, has got to, and have got to. These modals we can conjugate differently depending on the subject, okay? So, for example, let's look at this example over here, a subway system. That's my subject. and it's singular. It's one subway system. So if I think about this, right, when something is singular in English, I need to conjugate in the third person. Okay? And if I look at my modals and I think which ones do I conjugate in the third person, it would be, for example, these ones. Has got to, has to, and needs to. So I'm using the conjugation of these modals in the third person with the S's, right? Because that's the third person conjugation. So I can read, a subway system has got to be constructed, or a subway system has to be constructed, or a subway system needs to be constructed, okay? But I'm using the S's, right? Has and needs, because I'm using a singular subject. For example, a subway system. Now, if I change the subject and I make it plural, for example, subway systems, okay? Now it's plural. And when something's plural in English, I don't conjugate in the third person. I just use my normal base form verb. So for example, subway systems have got to be constructed, subway systems have to be constructed, or subway systems need to be constructed, okay? And I'm using my normal base form verbs for those. So careful with conjugating in the third person when your subject is singular. However, when I talk about must and should and ought to, okay, there's no conjugation. So I don't need to worry about singular and plural. For example, bridges in this example is plural. Bridges is plural, and I only use should. I don't need to think about conjugating. So bridges should be repaired. Or for example, a driving restriction, that's singular, but it doesn't matter because I'm using ought to. A driving restriction ought to be enforced. Or a new highway, again singular, but when I use must, it's always the same. A new highway must be built, okay? So basically, only with these modals do you need to think about conjugation for the third person. And the other ones, you don't need to worry about. Okay, so thank you for watching, and I hope this video was helpful in understanding how we use the passive voice with a modal to express our suggestions or our opinions. Okay, so good luck.
A. Complete the sentences positively or negatively. Choose a model that shows how strongly you feel about these issues. So here in this exercise, you can answer, you can use positive, affirmative, or negative, as you feel. More than one answer is possible. Number 1. People allowed to use cell phones while driving. People shouldn't be allowed. Or people mustn't be allowed to use cell phones while driving. Number 2. Young people. Young people permit to get married before the age of 15. Young people shouldn't be permitted to get married before age of 15. Another answer. Young people mustn't be permitted to get married before age 15. So have your two answers. Shouldn't be permitted, mustn't be permitted. 3. Companies required to give workers periodic breaks. Periodic from time to time. Breaks from time to time. 3. Companies ought to be required to give workers periodic breaks. Another answer, companies must be required to give workers periodic breaks. 4. People allowed to have pets in high-rise apartments. High-rise apartments, high buildings. So people shouldn't be allowed to have pets in high-rise apartments. 5. Scientists permit to use animals for research. Scientists have got to be permitted to use animals for research, or scientists mustn't be permitted to use animals for research. 6. Laws. passed to ban the sale of handguns. 6. Laws must be passed to ban the sale of handguns, or laws have got to be passed to ban the sale of handguns. 7. The sale of fur. What's fur products? Fur, animal skin. The sale of fur, animal skin. The sale of fur products shouldn't be prohibited. 8. Something due to stop clubs from staying open too late. Something has to be done to stop clubs from staying open late. Or something must be done to stop clubs from staying open so late. B. Group work. Compare your statements. Do you agree with one another? If not, why not? So here, you compare your opinions with your friends and then you discuss it together. A. People shouldn't be allowed to use cell phones while driving. It's dangerous. B. You may have a point. You're right. But laws shouldn't be passed to prevent it. That's too strict. C. Maybe, but in my opinion, and you continue. This is of course going to be a group work between you and your friends. Exercise number 4. Discussion. What's your opinion? A. Group work. Think of 3 reasons for and 3 reasons against each idea below. Then discuss your views as a group. Form an opinion about each idea. So have your different ideas and then you discuss it. Some people are for, some people are against. You mention different reasons for and against. This means you are against these ideas or you are for these ideas. Example. Imposing strict dress codes for students. Imposing strict dress codes. Dress codes, rules about appropriate clothing. Requiring people to do volunteer work. Volunteer work, work done without payment. Paying teachers less when their students fail. So these are some issues, and we need 3 reasons for and 3 reasons against. Offering a different opinion, you can use these expressions. This sounds interesting, but I think. That's not a bad idea. On the other hand, I feel. You may have a point. However, I think. Example A and B. A. What do you think? What do you think about imposing strict dress codes for students? What do you think about imposing strict dress codes for students? B. I think it's a terrible idea. It's too bad idea. Students shouldn't be required. Students shouldn't be required to wear a certain uniform. B. Class activity. Share your group's opinion and reasons. Who has the most persuasive reasons for and against each position?
2. Exercise 5. Listening. What should be done? Part A. Listen to people discuss problems. What solutions do they suggest? Take notes in the chart. 1. People talking loudly on cell phones in restaurants.
Hello? Yes? Oh, hi. No.
Ugh, I hate it when people use cell phones in restaurants.
Me too. It's so unnecessary and so rude to everybody else.
I agree. I think people with cell phones should be asked to leave them at the door. You know, like coats and umbrellas. They can always check their voicemail later to see if there are any messages.
Exactly. That's a great idea.
Number 1, look at the picture. Here's someone is talking on the phone, on his cell phone, on his mobile. The customers, the other people are very angry. They are in a restaurant. So what is the problem? People talking loudly on cell phones in restaurants. What is the solution? People with cell phones should be asked to leave them at the door. Number 2.
2. Car alarms going off at night.
I tell you another thing that drives me crazy. When people's car alarms go off in the middle of the night.
Yeah. Don't you hate it when an alarm wakes you from a deep sleep? It's such an awful sound. And it just goes on and on.
I think people who park regularly on the street ought to be required to let their neighbors know their license plate number and their telephone number. Then, if their alarm goes off, someone can call them to come down and turn it off.
Good idea. At least that way they'd be sure to get woken up too.
Number 2. Car alarms going off at night. So look at the picture. Someone is sleeping, and then what happened? During his sleeping, there was a car alarm going off. So what is the solution? People who park regularly on the street ought to be required to let their neighbors know their license plates, know their license plate number and their telephone number. 3. Look at the picture here. A young lady. She's talking. Maybe she is call center agent or sales. Maybe she's working in the telemarketing department. Another person running fast to catch the mobile.
Three, telemarketing salespeople calling too often.
And I really hate it when people call me at home and try to sell me stuff.
Me too. I think the telephone companies should offer a service that automatically blocks telemarketing calls.
That's an interesting idea. That way, we might pay a little bit more, but we'd have peace.
Right.
Number 3, what is the solution? The telephone companies should offer a service that automatically blocks telemarketing calls. Again, the answers. Number 1, people with cell phones should be asked to leave them at the door. 2, people who park regularly on the street ought to be required to let their neighbors know their license plate numbers and their telephone number. 3, the telephone companies should offer a service that automatically blocks telemarketing calls. Group work. Do you agree or disagree with the solutions? What do you think should be done about each problem? So now, this is your opinion, and you should tell your friends and partners about it. Exercise number 7. Word power. Local concerns. Pair word. Which of these issues are problems in your community? Check through the appropriate boxes. So here, you look at the picture. What do you see? There's an aeroplane, and the aeroplane is flying near houses. Of course, this is noise pollution. We have here different problems, like number 1, bullying. Bullying means frightening someone who's smaller and weaker. This happens especially in schools. Company outsourcing. Outsourcing. Outsourcing, hiring people outside the company to perform certain jobs. Graffiti. American تصفدي graffiti. Graffiti, illegal words and pictures. Illegal words and pictures drawn on buildings. Homelessness. Homelessness, to be homeless. Not having a home or house. Healthcare inadequate, not enough. Of affordable child care. Shortage. Noise pollution. Overcrowded classrooms. Overcrowded classrooms in the USA. If the class is about 32, this is an overcrowded class. In the USA, the Minister of Education said, "We have overcrowded classrooms. It's a hell. Some classes are over 32. Stray animals. Stray animals, dogs and cats that don't belong to anyone. Dogs and cats in the street. Street crime. When people have different crimes in the street. B. Group work. Join another pair of students. Which three problems concern your group the most? What should or can be done about them? So in this exercise, you're going to choose 2 or 3 problems and then discuss it. You have to discuss them with your group. That's the end of unit number 15, part 1, interchange 3, 4th edition. Now let's get the homework. 1. Keep the words by heart. 2. Listen and repeat. 3. Watch the video of Mr. Kyle Relson, the grammar video. 4. Go to www.cambridge.org/interchangearcade/. 5. Answer 3 pages of unit number 15 workbook, the first 3 pages of interchange 3 4th edition workbook, unit 15, first 3 pages. Wish you all good luck. Hope you like it, share it, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, guys. Exercise 1, snapshot. It's against the law. In the United States and Canada. In Arizona, you may go to prison for 25 years if you cut down a cactus. This is a cactus. It's a plant which grows in desert. In New Britain, contact. Fire trucks must travel at 25 miles per hour even when going to a fire. So if the fire truck travels more than 25 miles per hour, it's a problem. In the state of Washington, it's illegal to pretend your parents are rich. It's illegal, not legal, against the law. It's against the law to pretend. To say something which is not true. To show something which is not true. That your mom and dad are very rich people. Bullying. Intentionally frightening someone who's smaller or weaker. Intentionally frightening someone who's smaller or weaker. Often a problem in schools. Outsourcing. Hiring people outside the company to perform certain jobs. Downsizing. A reduction in the number of employees. A reduction in the number of employees working for a company. Ethnic conflict. Problems between people of different races, nations, tribes, or cultural background. Graffiti. Also can make the T soft D. Graffiti. Words or pictures written or drawn illegally on walls of buildings and public property. Illiteracy. Being unable to read or write. Stray animals. Dogs and cats that don't belong to anyone. Unit 15. There should be a law.
Presentation Plus is available exclusively with the new 4th edition of Interchange, the most widely used and the most successful English course in the world, incorporating video, audio, and even online resources, all with the click of a mouse. With Presentation Plus, your students will be laser focused on the task at hand as you use the built-in presentation tools to highlight key concepts, reveal answers to exercises, annotate passages, play class audio passages and video segments, and even embed web links right into your lessons. Let us show you how Presentation Plus can help you deliver more engaging and effective lessons. Visit the link below or contact your Cambridge University.
Illegal, not legal, against the law. Offense, a crime. Royalties, money that's paid to a musician. The meaning of this word, payment. 2. Word of exercise number 2. Helmet, a hard protective hat. Leash, a chain or leather strap to lead a dog. Litter, to spread across an area or place it untidily. Honk, make noise with a horn. 3. Periodic, from time to time. High rise, tall building. Ban, prohibit, forbid. Fur, animal skins. Strict, very strong. Dress codes, rules about appropriate clothing. Offensive, disrespectful.
University Press representative for a demonstration today.
Hello and welcome to English for Arabs channel. English for Arabs is English for all. Interchange 3. Unit 15, Part 1, 4th edition. Unit 15. There should be a law. Page 100. 1. The words of exercise number 1. Cactus. Cactus, a prickly plant that grows in the desert. Pretend. Act as if something is true when it's false. Seeing eye dog, a dog that's trained to guide blind people. Some words here are extra, like this word, from Interchange 3rd edition. Flush. Pull a lever or cord to make water go through a toilet. Legal, illegal.